John Joseph Paul was born on August 17, 1918, to Roland and Louise Paul of La Crosse, Wisconsin. He was the oldest son in the family of 10 children, including 4 sisters and 6 brothers. Johnny Paul, as he was known in La Crosse, grew up in the shadow of St. Joseph's Cathedral. He attended Cathedral Grade School and Aquinas High School, where he was active in many sports, but was outstanding in baseball and basketball.
He had ball games to go to, even in high school, he was playing ball all the time. And of course, when he got during the summer months, he was playing baseball with the American Legion.
But I remember him very much when I was a boy, because he was kind of a legend in La Crosse. He was a baseball player that I remember seeing on the Franz tire team. They were the sponsors. I remember seeing him as a catcher in baseball, and he was good.
Upon graduation, he attended Loras College, then called Columbia College, in Dubuque, Iowa. Known as a natural athlete and leader, he excelled in many sports.
As he developed a catcher there, he got to be a catcher at Loras too, and he played ball with them.
Though he would never talk about it, John became quite well known for his prowess on the basketball court.
I remember after a game down in Cotter High School, he took 3 or 4 of us seniors in the car. We went down to La Crosse, stayed overnight in his mother's house, went down to Dubuque, Iowa. Never suggested anybody ever attend Loras College. We were just going down there to see a ball game. And of course, he walks into the field house, and the manager, the professional manager, comes out, and of course, he's all over Father Paul. He's obviously one of the local heroes. And then we're at the game. We go early, and we're sitting behind the scorer's table. And all of a sudden, some adults right behind us said, "There's Johnny Paul." Well, of course, we'd never heard anybody address Father Paul as Johnny Paul, and we would never dared. He was always Father Paul. And they began to talk about this guy, whom we thought we knew pretty well. We were high school seniors then. And they started talking about all of his athletic achievements while he had been at Loras. And boy, we gained an added amount of respect, learning that he had done things we never had heard about, and of course, never from him.
John Paul was inducted into the Loras College Athletic Hall of Fame in 1983 for his accomplishments in baseball, basketball, and football.
Johnny Paul never looked back. One of the amazing things about him, you could hang around him a lot, and he never ever talked about games that he played, about times, when he had the winning shot. One time, Loras played Marquette, 3 overtimes. Paul scores the final basket. They carry him off the field, off the floor. They put him on the shoulders down at Loras College, and they carry him off the basketball floor. Okay, he would never talk about that kind of thing.
In 1939, the clergyman catcher, as one local sports writer liked to call him, was offered a chance to try out for the Chicago Cubs. Instead, John followed God's calling and entered St. Mary's Seminary in Baltimore, Maryland, a decision he never regretted. He was ordained a priest at the St. Rose of Viterbo Convent in La Crosse on January 23, 1943. From his earliest years, Father Paul loved working with children. Many recall how the young man dedicated his college summers to the orphans at St. Michael's.
I remember seeing him as a lifeguard out at St. Michael's Orphanage, and I know that as a seminarian, he was reaching out already to, the kids who were underprivileged, and he had this great big heart.
His mother once told people that he used to run from his home on 8th Street all the way to St. Michael's to work with the boys in the garden, take them boating or fishing, and teach them how to play baseball.
And he used to go there and work in the summertime when he was in the seminary. And even ready then, his connection with the young boys that were there, they were hard as rocks, but not around him, because he was just like a father to them, and they followed him around like like little mice, you know, and he took them all over.
His first assignment after ordination was assistant pastor of St. Patrick's Parish and teacher at St. Patrick's School in January 1943.
I would have been in 7th or 8th grade when he came to Eau Claire, and I think all the young people in the parish immediately fell in love with him, and so did the parish, and so did most of Eau Claire as time went by. He was a remarkable figure, attractive, charismatic, very intelligent, and a manly man.
Well, at St. Pat's and Regis, from the earliest time that he was there, I think he plunged into the school. He just had a natural rapport with youth. That was an apostolate that just was as natural as drinking a glass of water. And so the opportunity was there under Casper Dowd, the previous pastor to Monsignor Brady. And Monsignor Brady really gave him full authority because he had tremendous trust in him.
From the beginning of his priesthood, Father Paul inspired all who knew him with his enthusiasm and dedication to Catholic education.
I don't think there was ever as dynamic a high school with great activity intellectually. I taught seniors. We won a state debate contest. We did very well, undefeated in football. We were state basketball champions. But also, the students were high achievers intellectually.
Bishop Paul, I think he, with his education, taught you that there's a lot more to life than just sports. There's a great religious education.
I think his dedication to the education part of the whole thing was his primary thing. He did it in such a way that he was very unselfish. It was all about somebody else. If he had to help somebody, his kids were in trouble, he was a great guidance counselor. I don't know, he just all-around great man, great priest, and somebody that you really respected, and totally unselfish.
There weren't any other athletic opportunities for girls in those days, and I wasn't an athlete athletically. I was athletically challenged. So I didn't have that experience, but I do remember this sense of you know, don't take the easy way, you know, do the right thing was very much a strong emphasis with Bishop Paul.
There's only one thing I can really say about him, and I'll do it this way. He was a great teacher. He was a great coach. And he was probably one of the finest priests around. But yet, with all of those things, Father Paul was a greater person.
He was very athletically inclined. He used to pitch for the softball team in the church league. He used to swim with us up on the Chippewa River. And we kind of all thought that athletics were really the big deal with Father Paul. And of course, after we got out of school and you get older, you find out that the athletics were very minor. He was interested in athletics, any other extracurricular thing that you did only in as far as it making you a better person, and that was the whole key to it.
Yeah, looking back, I mean, he was not only kind of a Renaissance man type guy, but he was very serious about education. I suppose some of the others have told you about when he used to come up, even in grade school, when they handed out report cards. I don't know if anyone told you these stories, but he used to kind of put pressure on people. He'd call each one up to the desk and review their report card, and then you know, it was tough on some people, made them think about how they were doing and so on.
I remember, you know, teaching us in class, And, you know, sometimes you'd be a little scared. You know, you didn't want to come without your work done. But I was a pretty good student, and I usually had my work done. But he would oftentimes ask questions that went beyond, you know, what you had prepared. You couldn't just give a rote answer. And I don't remember any specific incident, but I know that he always kind of wanted to go a little bit deeper. You know, you couldn't just give the rote answer like you could, you know, give back what the catechism says. That's not it. You have to, he tried to really help us to understand what it was. And I think that was good.
And he appeared to know everyone personally. And it was just, he was a wonderful man.
He gave us an assignment. He was, because of his name, he was devoted to St. Paul. And so he not only had us give book reports on St. Paul, but he had us make maps of St. Paul and his journeys. And then we had to write what St. Paul did on each of his journeys. So he gave me Father Paul gave me a good introduction to Middle East geography. So.
I can still picture him. He'd be wearing his cassock, a small office, and as people came in, you had the knowledge that he had a total and complete understanding of each of the students in the high school. He would know their parents, he would know their biography, he would know who they were dating, he would know how well they were doing in their studies and what they were doing in extracurricular activities, and he was totally on top of that high school.
To the students, the young athletic Father Paul was bigger than life.
I got to know who Bishop Paul was back in '43 because John Paul became the sort of the hero for all the young boys in town. He was only at St. Pat's about 3 or 4 weeks, and everybody in town knew him, and every kid was passing the word on and saying, hey, do you know the new priest down at St. Pat's?
Everything for us kids changed because all of a sudden the gym was open and the tumbling mats were out. We'd never seen one. And there was a basketball hoop, a couple of hoops put up on the playground, and of course Father Paul dug the holes and helped pour the concrete. And there's always a basketball stored just inside the screen door or inside the side door of the parish rectory that any kid could come along, open the door, get the ball, and go out and play. That had never happened before. So there was more activity and more encouragement of activity.
Well, he was an imposing person, so just meeting him, you gain respect and admiration for the guy. So I think everybody that met him gained a lot in life.
He was a disciplinarian. He was a little rough on the boys. He was real strict. He'd give them a kick in the shin if they had to. The girls, he kind of left us alone.
He was very much a disciplinarian. He came when we were in the 3rd grade, and he started noon basketball games, 5-minute basketball games between the grades. And that's how things started to move at St. Pat's.
He was the toughest man that I have ever been around in a lifetime. And he was tough physically, tough mentally, tough spiritually. And if he had any effect, I don't claim to be tough, but if he had any effect, he had a toughening effect in all those areas.
Just because it was him, you respected him. He just gave you something that, without knowing it, it was helping you just by him being there.
I remember one incident when I was young. I was late for Mass, and I was an altar boy that day. Well, you didn't come late when you were an altar boy. You didn't come late for anything as far as Father Paul was concerned. So later in the day, I was on the playground, and he said, Harry, come over here, he said, and so I heard that you were late for Mass this morning. And I started to answer him, and he reached up and kicked me right in the shin. And that got my attention right away.
Because you tried to do your best all the time when he was around. You just I think he felt that you should do that, you know, or I always was a little bit in awe of him, but not to the point where I couldn't talk to him or anything like that, because he was very down to earth.
I can remember he would go to confession to him on Saturday afternoons, and of course, get done with your confession, he'd say, "Mac, take the keys and go over and lock up the gym." You know, he was close to us.
I went to Loras College in Dubuque, Iowa, in large part, because he had graduated from there, and I figured that any school that put out a guy like that certainly wouldn't do me any harm.
He's one of the major reasons I'm a priest, and I won't speak for others by name, but you probably have noticed there were quite a number of vocations from St. Patrick's Parish during those years. Father Paul was a big piece of that.
He was probably the greatest influence of any person in my life. He was my role model, and if I have done anything positive since working with kids or family, it's because of Father John Paul.
To some, Father Paul left lasting impressions that literally changed their lives.
I remember one session one summer where he found out that I wasn't going to school too much. When I was a freshman, I was playing first string in football and basketball as a freshman, and I got a big head. And I wasn't studying, and I was flunking. So that summer, we had to do something to get me straightened out, and he set up a program. I had to report to the parish house every morning at 8 o'clock it was. And we'd start out with breakfast. He'd give me a bowl of cereal. And we'd go from there over out to the playground, which was blacktop. And nobody was out there at that hour. And I would play center, and he'd play the nose tackle over center. And he taught me how to take punishment. And he used to bloody me up quite often. I got the privilege then of playing professional football, which again, not too many people from Eau Claire have this on their resume. And I'm proud of it. I'm very proud of it. But Eau Claire gave me that chance. Father Paul gave me that chance. And I say thank you.
He was our freshman basketball coach, and he'd be out in his cassock and basketball shoes and demonstrating, and he was all elbows and knees. He was the roughest, toughest, dirtiest basketball player, but he was showing us that little aggression on the athletic court wasn't all bad, you know. But he would, and then his knee would go out of joint. It would become dislocated. And he would hop over on one leg to the bleacher and sit down and put his knee back in joint and come back out on the court. And you didn't say anything, and he didn't say anything, but just practice resumed. But the lesson was obvious that someday in life, whether in athletics or just in life in general, if you broke your leg in two places, you were expected to hop over to the bleachers, set the bone yourself, and get back into the ball game. And it was a lesson well taken.
Not only did he make a huge difference in the lives of the young people at St. Patrick's Parish, he also made a remarkable impact on the city of Eau Claire.
It's too bad, but in those days, there was a lot of religious conflict in Eau Claire. You could say almost that Eau Claire was Lutheran and Catholic, and the two sides. There were actually letters to the editor being written all the time when one team would play each other, or even not involved with sports and other issues. There were battles going on, more with the adults than with the players or the students. But there was definite animosity in the town between Lutherans and Catholics. And Father Paul, I believe, sought to mend and alleviate that situation from the very time that he got in.
I think he had an enormous impact on the whole parish of St. Patrick's Parish as it was then in Eau Claire, the students who went to Regis. But frankly, beyond that, he got to know a lot of young men and women in the community through sports.
He was a life force in the city of Eau Claire, in the parishes, not only St. Patrick's, where he served his early years, but also he touched the other parishes in town, Immaculate Conception, Sacred Heart, St. Olaf, St. James. And he was kind of the cynosure of all eyes. People admired him, listened to him, modeled themselves after him, and he was everything of what a great leader should be.
He was very active in the city. Like people might have already told you, he played in a chamber of commerce games up at Carson Park.
They had some type of a pickup baseball game for a charity or whatever, and the Carson Park was full, because I know I was standing out in left field. Of course, Father had an opportunity to be a pro baseball player as a catcher.
They were playing some younger guys, and one of the guys was a reserve tackle for the University of Wisconsin, home for the summer.
I think it was Truman Farr, and he was a big guy. He's 6 foot something, big shoulders, heavy body, and with a reputation, he'd run you over at the blink of an eye.
Somebody hit a pop fly to left field, and this guy decided to come home on the fly.
Truman's going down to second, he's around second, he's going to he's around third, he's coming home. And the whole Carson Park held its breath.
And Father Paul was catching, and the guy was going to run right through. This guy was a great big tackle, he weighed about 240. He was going to run right through Father Paul.
Because the throw was to the plate, and here's this young, frail 20s, age 20s priest. And a lot of these people had never seen a priest in public without a black suit on, you know. And this priest is going to catch the ball, and here comes Truman, and this is what happens.
Father Paul caught the ball and caught the guy on his shoulder and lifted up, and the guy went sailing over home plate and landed a couple feet on the other side, and then Father Paul just kind of walked over and tapped him while he was laying on the ground.
And the crowd went absolutely bananas. And, you know, memory's a funny thing. I think that happened twice in that game.
So, guy got on base again. Well, I'm going to get him this time, he says. Well, round third, he comes again. Father Paul's there waiting for him, and head over heels he went again. So I think everybody in the stands loved him for that. I don't know how popular this other guy was, but he learned a lesson that night.
That has nothing to do with mending fences. But my point is that was a mixed group of people from all around town, Protestants, Catholics, people in the government, people that work for the city, whatever, you know, getting together. That probably hadn't been happening too much before he got there.
I've always called him an ambassador of the Catholic school system to the area and city of Eau Claire, and he certainly performed that very well. But that's just, again, usually by example, and not by any word of mouth.
I never realized how much influence Father Paul had until one time we were coming back from Aquinas basketball game in the winter, and we got stuck in the snow down by Whitehall, and it was snowbanks, just terrible. And Father Brady took my car and drove it into the snowbank, and that was the end of that. It killed out. So we all got on the bus, and we got in as far as Foster, and we were in the tavern there, and no snowplows. Father gets on the phone, and he calls up the sheriff, B.A. Thompson at the time, and I was standing right alongside of him. And he says, I got a busload of kids down here. You got to get a plow down here to get us out of here. Yes, Father. Right away, Father. And here comes the snowplow.
Father Paul was exactly what the deanery of Eau Claire needed. He stayed on at St. Patrick's High School, became principal, and oversaw the construction of his successor, Regis High School.
One of his legacies was that he immediately thought about making it a city-wide central high school. Now that you know the enrollment is down and everything, I guess that wouldn't be difficult. But right away he was thinking of centralizing it, meaning that Sacred Heart Parish and other parishes felt as much in the school system and in the high school thing as any other parish did. I mean, it was so closely aligned with St. Patrick's when he first came.
This town needed Regis High School badly. It unified the city to a great degree. as Garvey will tell you all the time, Jim will tell you, that the split between the two was pretty drastic back when I was young. The pastor was German in my place, and he was Irish at St. Pat's, and it was just like there was a concrete wall between.
He was the principal when it became an interparochial school, a central high school, and he was very, he gave his heart and soul to that. So he was instrumental in planning the building and making sure that it got built. He was up here all the time when they were building, watching to make sure everything was going up right, all the construction crews. And then, of course, he was tireless in getting the thing paid for, making all kinds of appearances and talking to people, because the parishes had to do it, but they needed donors, So he did a lot of that work. So the fact that we have a Catholic high school here in Eau Claire, I think, is really due to a lot of his efforts.
The new school was dedicated in 1953.
When I was a freshman, it was still St. Patrick's High School. Then when I became a sophomore, the decision was made to make the school interparochial. And so it was called St. Patrick's Central High School. But that only lasted 1 year. The other parishes in town wanted the name changed. And so then when I was a junior, the name changed to Regis High School.
When we were seniors, we were the name Regis, but not the building. And we came up with the idea of buying a brick for Regis. It's not a bad little theme. It was 50 cents a brick. And during Lent, everybody gave us the 50 cents. And I was the Catholic Action Chairman for our class, and we competed against the other 3 classes who could buy the most bricks for the new school.
So we were the last class in the old building. And during that year when we were seniors is when this school was being built. So we got a chance to come and we'd look at the building and we'd marvel at how big the gym was and how wonderful everything was. It was really beautiful.
Father Paul worked at Regis High School for 2 more years before he was appointed rector of the now closed Holy Cross Seminary in La Crosse. He was appointed the title of Monsignor Paul in 1956. That same year, he also earned a master's degree in education from Marquette University in Milwaukee. Monsignor Paul worked for over 10 years as rector of the Holy Cross Seminary before being appointed in 1966 as rector of the new Cathedral of St. Joseph the Workman in downtown La Crosse, just minutes from his boyhood home.
He was a great man for a second chance. He never judged you on yesterday. It was always just on today. And so as a result, he was good with, especially with guys that, got a bit frisky at times or got their nose a little dirty, and then they'd go to him and they'd see him. Or when he was at the cathedral, when we were living together at the cathedral, I don't know how he took it, but the doorbell was constantly ringing of people that wanted to come in and had, they were down on something for some reason or another, and he was a good listener in things like that. And I think it was his attitude of being firm but kind, always firm but kind.
Monsignor Paul was named auxiliary bishop in 1977 and became the diocesan bishop in 1983. As bishop, Paul was known for being a working man's bishop and a great man and a great leader.
No matter how important he got, from the standpoint of being king in Eau Claire, to going down and be the head of the seminary, or being the rector of the cathedral, even as bishop, he was just as common as could be. He never had to put on any airs.
And he was an excellent bishop. He knew how to listen. He always knew how to get 10 or 12 people in the room. And psychologically, he could read each person and figure each person out and not say much. And he could get people to talk and learn and talk and learn and talk and learn. And then he would kind of put it all together and he'd make the decision. He made good decisions.
And as our bishop, he was very good to us sisters. And you know, the church does not support the sisters. We have to earn our way. But Bishop Paul was always very generous to us and tried to help us out and make sure that we were taken care of too. So he's been a friend of ours for all those years.
When I was in 8th grade, Bishop Paul, he was the first bishop I had ever met growing up in rural central Wisconsin. It's one of those things that you never really saw bishops, you never really saw hierarchy. And I was serving for a mass that he was coming out to celebrate with our parish. It was our centennial mass. And I was all nervous. I was asked to be a server, and it was an exciting time for me. And I thought, what do you say to a bishop? How do you act with a bishop? And just, thinking to myself, I mean, the successor of the apostles is coming to visit our parish. What do you say and do? And when he was there, I'll never forget when he was there and just feeling that nervousness as I'm sitting there and he's walking towards me, and he turned toward me and didn't say hello or anything, but he just belted me in the chest with his bishop's ring and just looked at me. He's like, "You should be a priest," and just kept on walking. And so he quite literally had a physical effect on my life, but it was an effect that was very positive, that since a very young age, since the age of 4, I'd often thought about priesthood. And in a very real way, putting a stamp on that discernment for me it was really a powerful expression for me of his fidelity to the diocese and his desire to support me if I was to be a priest.
When I was his vocation director, he gave me one regulation. He said, when you go out and visit schools, he said, be sure and instruct those children that the priesthood is not a job, it's a privilege. And it's a privilege because we as priests can do things for people that nobody else can do. And so that was kind of the theme that I had for myself as I went out to schools for 4 years and dealt with children.
Bishop John Paul moved closer to God on Sunday, March 5, 2006. At his funeral, Bishop Listecki said, "A native son of the Diocese of La Crosse, a good priest, a true shepherd, and a friend of the entire community, has gone to the Lord." For many, it was the passing of an era, but for the students and faculty at Regis, his spirit lives on. Throughout his life, Bishop Paul was a firm believer in educating young people in the Catholic faith. His lessons about life and faith live on today in the hearts and minds of thousands who were influenced by his belief in striving for excellence in mind, body, and spirit.
It'd be easy to look at buildings and think his legacy was a new Regis High School in the 50s, or the seminary where he served, which was a new institution, or the cathedral where he was rector. But that would really miss the point. I think his monument is in the minds and the hearts and the faith of people he touched. He was a real role model, a very holy man, a very good man, and he wasn't afraid to challenge us to do better.
He would talk about being generous and giving and being cheerful. And, there was none of this feeling sorry for yourself. None of that stuff. I mean, it was very, and I think it was very good training.
It was such a different time. The nuns were really the backbone and the foundation of it, and then they always had the priests to back them up. And of course, you never at that time ever went home and said the nun wasn't fair to you or the priest, because then you'd catch it again. It was just a kind of a different era, and that's what we grew up and that's what we thought was the way things were done.
The importance of being a good Christian person is important to a good town, a good government, and that you'll pass this on during your life to your children, hopefully, and grandchildren, and that we can make a better world.
Without the education, you don't know why you believe if you haven't been educated. So I came up through grade school and high school, all the way up, and I felt at the time, having been with my favorite couples, the Benedictines and the Jesuits, I don't think I would have been strong enough to put up with what I did down at the university without their help and the support they had given me.
His legacy is the leadership that he offered, the example that he set at all times. But again, to me, his legacy, his main legacy, is he loved being a priest. This is the thing that drove him in everything that he did.
The effect on spirituality, I think he taught us that you could be a real man and be really spiritually tuned in, that these things were not exclusive whatsoever. In fact, they may even fit better. You can be a better real man by being a better, have a better spiritual relationship with God. So I think, again, that was more by example than anything else. So
as far as my faith, I'm still a strong believer in my faith, and I've tried to impart this to our children. And it all falls back on this man.
Regis High School, one of Bishop Paul's most notable and endearing achievements, is at a crossroads. Smaller families, higher personnel costs, competing parish ministries, and an increase in single-parent families have resulted in both fewer applicants and higher tuition, a burden many people simply can't afford.
Well, Catholic education is running into a lot of problems, and you know, when we went through school, it didn't cost so much because we had the nuns that worked for nothing. And now, of course, it's gotten more expensive.
It's unbelievable the amount of money that it costs, and I think because you had basically free teachers and priests that they could control the cost a little bit, but now I don't know how they do it. I mean, it just has to cost a lot of money, so, and you can't charge it all to tuition.
Our Catholic schools, Regis and our other Catholic schools in Eau Claire, continue to have many needs. Our tuition has risen substantially in the last 2 years particularly. And we're at a point now where our tuition is truly taking a significant portion of a family's income.
But there is hope.
Back in the 70s, there was always talk about, gee, can Regis survive and will it close and all that sort of thing, and that was the talk on the street corner, and for some, it wasn't a case of should it, but when will it? But once we established that foundation in about 1975 and had our first fund drive and raised what was thought to be a boodle of money then, about $400,000, all of a sudden, all of that talk stopped, because that foundation with some real financial support seemed to put the stamp on the place as, by golly, it's here forever.
Though he only spent 12 years in Eau Claire, the dedication and devotion that Bishop Paul felt toward Catholic education and values lives on even today.
Catholic education is important to me because my faith is important to me. I mean, it's one of the central parts of my life, and having an education at a Catholic school helps you to further your faith and learn more about it and find a deeper meaning in it.
Regis, as much as it has changed in terms of perhaps some of the curriculum, there's a sense of core values that is constant. We do not have the wonderful Benedictine presence. We have a teaching chaplain. We don't have 3 or 4 priests. So the people teaching have changed, but the emphasis on co-curriculars. If you look through the archives and you look through the newspapers from St. Pat's and Regis from the 40s and the 50s, there was an emphasis on drama, there was an emphasis on forensics, there was an emphasis on athletics. Regis is still known for those items, for those extracurriculars, for those opportunities for students to participate.
Those dedicated priests and sisters aren't here anymore, but they have entrusted their mission to your hands and hearts. Regis High School students are thriving today because of Bishop Paul's legacy of caring for the whole person in mind, body, and spirit. With your continued support, we can and will make sure that every child who wants a Catholic education can get one.
To me, Catholic education, the Catholic faith, the Catholic community is absolutely and without question the best insurance policy to gain salvation.
We're in a whole new ballgame today for Catholic schools. I've been a parish priest and a pastor and a high school principal and president of a Catholic college. The funding really wasn't much of a problem when you had priests and sisters and brothers who worked for essentially nothing. And at a time when parents had much less money than they do now, that was the only way it would have happened. Now I think it's time for the graduates of those schools, like me, like you, to provide the financial support, which we can do, and we're doing it.
It was inconceivable during the Depression years that you would have lots and lots of people who would be in the $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 income bracket. So why is that money given to us? Well, it's given to us so we need to give it back to the society and to make the society better.
If a person can afford to give back, which I think we all probably should, and help some kids, keep this place going so that they have the opportunity to get a Catholic education.
It's the one thing left in this town at the high school level that is promoting the Christian values and the Catholic faith, and we need to do as much as we can to keep that going.
You have a choice, and if you want to give, if you can give, not if you want to give, but if you can afford it, then do it. Help the people out that helped you.
And Regis is very definitely in my will. Whatever's left after I'm gone, I want a portion of that to go to Regis High School. And I hope other people will think of that in terms of their will.
Your prayerful gift can ensure that our young people today have the same opportunities that you were blessed with. Your gift, in Bishop Paul's memory, will be used locally to offset the cost of Catholic education. Your gift, managed by the Regis High School Foundation, will help children continue to live the legacy that Bishop Paul started.
In his final will and testament, he asked to have Regis students come down and pray, to pray at the prayer service and at the Mass of his funeral Mass in the cathedral. He loved Regis. He loved Catholic education, and he would be very proud that individuals who had the opportunity to work with him through the years and were impacted by him thought enough of him to give back to the institution that he helped build.
At the 50th anniversary of Regis High School, Bishop Paul said, "When we pray, we speak to God. When we study, God speaks to us. I believe that God has spoken through study to thousands of young people in these walls."